Today's live, I said so, it's Stoic distraction, it's actually Stoic avoidance, which is much the same thing, avoiding what we should be doing and being easily distracted by things that we shouldn't be focused on at all. As I said before, we are focusing on Mrs. Bennet today, an incorrigible character in Pride and Prejudice. If you don't know the story, she's the mother figure, she's the matriarch, but she's not a particularly good example. She's set up as an example of something not to be, which enables her daughters to become the antithesis of that and therefore shine. And as we know, in literature, if you have a character that exists as a protagonist, as someone who is developing, you need to be compared to somebody who hasn't developed at all in order to highlight your plight and make you shine. So today's question is, I can't stop my mind going round and round. If I'm not worried about one thing, it's another. I've been told I'm a worrier, but I'm sick of being branded like this, and I want to be a person in my own right. Without this stupid label, what can I do? Now, many of us are worriers. As women, it's easy to get caught up in the many demands we face every day. The many voices calling us every day to be something, do something, fix something. And this question is coming from a lady who has had enough. She's had enough of worrying. She's tired of her mind going round and round in circles, and she's desperately seeking a way out. What we do, as you know, in this session is we use our journals to support us, and we will be looking at what we're going to write in our journal today. We're just going to note one thing today that is distracting us regularly, a reoccurring thought. But before we do that, we are going to look at why distractions exist. Distractions stem from fears, and there are 6 fears. Any one of the distractions we have, any one of those avoidances that we create in our mind to distract us from everyday reality stem from either the fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of someone's love, old age, or death. These distractions, these fears, represent something that is a threat to our well-being, our inner peace. And as you know, as Stoics, practicing Stoics, what we are trying to do is understand our fears and work with them, not avoid them, but learn through the Stoic principle of knowledge that they are just that, a fear that's irrational. And a fear is something that our brain is seeking constantly. So obviously it makes sense that our brain would be searching for threats. That's how it keeps us alive. That's how we survive. But we have lost a sense of balance. And threats, if we allow them, threats exist everywhere and overtake our sense of well-being. So again, a fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of someone's love, old age, or death. And what these fears do is, if we allow them to manifest, they paralyze our decision making, they drain our energy, they prevent us from realizing our full potential. The idea here is not to judge ourselves for having those recurring thoughts that are related to threats, but understand what the thought is, which threat it is related to, which fear, and compartmentalize it so it doesn't hold too much power over us. So the first thing to do in this Stoic step to understanding what's happening is identify the fear in order to overcome it. So we're going to, using our journals today, identify which of the 6 characters our fear, this distracting thought, this thought that is encouraging us to avoid living in the moment, identify which fear it is, and then create an understanding of that and compartmentalize it so it exists in a rational space. I hope that makes sense. This is what we're going to do today. And this is why we are using Mrs. Bennet as a great example of somebody, a character who is set up by Austen as someone who allows her fears to overtake her sense of, or her rational thought. She acts irrationally because she is driven by her fears. So again, to go back to the question, I've been DM'd a question which is, I cannot stop my mind going round and round and round. If I'm not worried about one thing, it's another. I've been told I'm a worrier, but I'm sick of being branded like this, and I want to be a person in my own right. So this questioner is saying to me, that's become my identity. That is what people associate me with, but there's so much more to me than that. I don't want to be labelled as a worrier. What can I do in order to take control of the situation? Because there are so many different elements to all of us. And the idea is today, let's escape from this control that our fears have over us. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our journal, and we are going to today, in today's page, and as you know, journaling, is a huge part of Stoic practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our journal and we are going to write down one thing that we are being distracted by, that we are allowing to distract us every day. And we are going to identify which fear that is related to. Okay, so I'm going to use an example from my own life at the moment. And I'm going to illustrate how I would work with that. So in my journal today, I have written down, I am consumed, it's the only word I can use, I am consumed with the fact that every time I wash my hair, every time I brush my hair, lots of hair comes out. Now, that might sound to you a ridiculous fear, but it is a representation of something that I have allowed to manifest in my mind as something really negative and a threat to to my well-being. And this is related to my fear of old age. Because what it's saying is I'm acknowledging that there are changes happening to me as I'm getting older and I don't like them. And my mind is saying, guess what? That means you're getting old. You're going to lose all your hair. Everything's going to go downhill from here. This is only going one way, Stephanie. And of course, by overthinking, by repeating that thought, I am allowing that fear to manifest and become much larger than it needs to be, if indeed it needs to be a fear at all. So that's what I've written in my journal. I've written down my fear, an honest representation of my fear. My hair keeps falling out. I'm really scared. One line, that's it. Small task, as we know with our journal, it's a small task. It's a bite-sized, attainable task that we must do regularly in order to stay on top of things. And then I've looked at the 6 fears and I've realised that's related to the fear of old age. So whatever your fear might be, you write that down and then you work out whether that's related to poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of someone's love, old age or death. Once it's written down, you can see it for what it is. It's not that, it's not a valid fear. It's that it has become, we have allowed it to become, by not checking on it, much larger than it is. And so now, the more we repeat that fear, and as we know the brain is seeking confirmation bias, the more we repeat that fear, the larger a problem it becomes. Because it's now paralysing decision making, it's draining our energy, it's preventing us from realising our potential, because those minutes, those hours, those thoughts that could have been spared from this self-destruction, if we don't check them, they become larger and larger and larger until we are identifying ourselves with the problem. Now, if I allow my fear to take charge, now I identify myself as somebody who's getting old. And from the outside looking in, you can see that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's an irrational fear. But the more I think it, the more established it becomes, the more a part of my identity it is becoming. So, step 1, we identify the fear. What's happening in one line? Then, which fear does it relate to in another line? That's your first step. You can't overcome, and one of the Stoic principles is knowledge, and part of the Stoic process is identifying before we can empower ourselves to fight against that. Hope that makes sense. So, once we've done that, we've identified the problem, the recurring thought, the distraction, we've associated it with one of the fears, then whenever that thought comes up, we say to ourselves, out loud, I've already thought that. Or, I thought that before. I've said that already. And we hold ourselves to account. And you may well have to do that 1,000 times in an hour. Because when you start identifying your thoughts, when you start connecting them with a fear, it's quite terrifying to realise that actually we all do that really frequently. And it doesn't matter how well versed you are in Stoicism, in the Stoic practice, how well versed you are at picking yourself up, it will keep coming, because that's what the brain does. It is seeking fear all the time. So again, we identify, we connect, and then we say, I've identified that. You're not going unnoticed. I've already thought that out loud. I've thought that before. Stop it, Stephanie. You've said that already. You're not a threat. This is not a threat. This is ridiculous. And you keep repeating your positive thought and your recognition of what's happening. And that's the only way to conquer it. If we were to connect that with emotion, actually it can be quite upsetting, because what we are saying to ourselves all the time is, you're not safe. Guess what? You're not safe. Guess what? Something's attacking you. There's something to be scared of. But if we remove the emotion and we say, look at what's really happening here, rationally look at it, and we say, I understand, I've done this before, I've looked in my journal, it's happened to me before. That is something I was worried about, and now I've connected it with a fear, and now I understand that's irrational. I'm going to stop that thought by saying out loud, I've already thought that. I thought that before. You said that to yourself already today. And you might do that over and over and over again, but don't stop. That's the key. Keep fighting it. Today, this morning, I said to myself, okay. I looked in the mirror, I said, okay, you've already said that. Is that the best you've got? Is that the biggest threat you've got? Guess what? I've heard it all before. Go away. Pathetic. I'm safe. You're not a threat to me. This thought is not a threat. I am safe. And that's what we are endeavouring to do. With this Stoic practice, this Stoic training is to create security within ourselves, to protect our inner peace, to keep our walls of our inner citadel high. And guess what? We are the biggest threat. External forces have only got the power we allow them to have. They have no more power than we give them. So it's our job to incorporate into our life some kind of understanding of the threat, some acknowledgement of the threat, not to be scared of it, acknowledge it, compartmentalise it, see it for what it is, and work with it. And that's my message today. Let's look at Mrs. Bennet. How did she handle her professed plight? So she's distracted. She's got this single-minded and obsessive focus on marrying off her 5 daughters to secure their financial future and the family's social standing as she sees it. So that's an external force. There's nothing physically that she can do to make this happen, to improve the family's social standing. But she's worrying constantly about it anyway. She has heightened anxiety. It is mentioned in the novel a few times. Austen mentions that she is living on her nerves. You have no compassion for my nerves. And this leads to inappropriate behaviour. She loudly discusses her daughter's marriage prospects. She sends them out in bad weather. She's overly concerned about competition from those neighbours who were supposed to be her friends, the Lucases. She is distracted constantly. She says, "It's very hard to think that Charlotte Lucas should ever be mistress of this house, that I should be forced to make way for her and live to see her take my place in it." She's concerning herself with things that haven't even happened. And Austen sets her up as a ridiculous character, but if we are honest with ourselves, this is something we do a lot. She is an overdramatic, extreme example of overthinking, of distraction. And this is why I've used her as an example, because she's such a great example of this. Driven by competitiveness, she's driven by future problems that exist only in her mind. They've yet to happen. So throughout this novel, she's engaged in tacit competition with Mrs. Lucas. The apparent triumph of Charlotte, because she marries Mr. Collins, who the house where they live is going to be given to when Mr. Bennet dies, brings out some of the worst in her. She's really obsessed with this. And if we see her as a character, we do not see her doing or spending her time actively doing anything else other than worry. And this is what creates, manifests in her physical deficiencies. She's bitter. She's particularly nasty to emphasise that while her fears about her daughter's futures are warranted, she has a shallow motivation. So, yes, we're not saying that there isn't some kind of a difficulty there, but it's become so enormous in her life that she's actually compromising her virtue by behaving in ridiculous ways. And instead of being relieved that Charlotte, as a friend of the family, would be unlikely to turn out the Bennets of their own house, all she can think of is her status and compare it with that of the Lucases. So what could she do differently? Well, if we look at her character, and this is why Jane Austen is so fantastic in the way she writes, because she casts aspersions subtly. She laughs at the ridiculousness, and she makes social comments about how we can allow ourselves to take things out of proportions, all for the sake of something as trivial as social status. She is poking fun at the whole idea of it. And this is why she's so well accomplished and so celebrated. Because in the time she wrote the novel, that was all there was. Okay, it was all about your social standing, it was all about money and wealth. And as we know in the novel, she mentions wealth a lot. So what can Mrs. Bennet do to change? Well, she could be focusing on the fact that in the grand scheme of things, actually, she's quite well set up. It's not a poor family. She has 5 daughters, the eldest 2 of which are significantly And we remember that in these times, a lot of value was put on this, significantly attractive enough to secure the interest of successful gentlemen and therefore prominent marriages. She could also remember that she is secure, very secure in where she lives. She has a social standing and good connections. So she has support from people around her. She has family members who are well established, who could help. But what she's doing is choosing to disregard that and focus on the fear that she has elevated to such a point that she can't see beyond it. And because of that, she sets a poor example for her daughters. So her youngest, one of her youngest daughters, Lydia, is greatly influenced by her behaviour. And of course, she goes to run away with Wickham. And then, when she is married, Mrs. Bennet chooses to focus on the fact she's married instead of paying attention to any of the material circumstances surrounding it. And she's almost in denial at the fact that there was a lot of compromise that took place to get to that point. She says, "Oh, my sweetest Lizzie, how rich and great you will be." So her second eldest daughter, the protagonist, Elizabeth, who she has spent the majority of the novel disregarding, sidelining, at the end of the story becomes her favourite child. What pin money, what jewels, what carriages you will have. Jane is nothing compared to it, nothing at all. I'm so pleased, so happy. And what we come to realise with Mrs. Bennet's character is, now there will be another fear. The fears won't stop coming, the ridiculousness won't cease. She, at the end of the story, has what she wants, and she is still being ridiculous, and there will be more problems ahead. And this is the message we should take from this. The problems never go away. They will always be there. The fears will always be there. The brain is trained to seek fear. So what do we do with that? Do we just allow it to run riot over our lives? And what I would suggest is no. We've got Mrs. Bennet completely disregarding Mr. Darcy in the beginning, and then establishing that, oh, actually, he really is someone of high value in the end. And this highlights the ridiculousness of focusing on things outside of our circle of control. So as we know, we have the dichotomy of control. She cannot, as a character, control what happens with her daughters, but what is in her control is her behaviour. Her resolve, her inner resolve to focus on the positive actions her family can take and disregard the rest. But of course it wouldn't be a successful story unless she was that ridiculous, because Pride and Prejudice is all about social commentary. So let's have a look at how the Stoic philosophers take on mental distraction. And as we know, Stoicism, it's not about suppressing our emotions, but developing resilience and a clarity of thought, the courage to act virtuously in an imperfect world. We understand there are difficulties. We understand there are fears. We understand the external forces will keep coming. It is war. We are at war with ourselves and the outside world. But that doesn't mean that we have to feel under attack. We can rationalize that and say, I can work within this. I accept and come to life the way life is, not the way I want it to be, the way it is, and I work with that. And going back to the journal, we note down the way it is. I am scared of this. This is happening to me every day. But I understand it is related to one of the 6 fears that my brain is seeking. And I realize my brain will keep repeating that fear to me until I'm broken, unless I understand what it's doing and I call it to account every day, sometimes 100 times a day. A quote from Marcus Aurelius: "Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice, and on freeing yourself from all other distractions." Every minute. The more we practice this, the easier it gets, but it is a daily endeavour. Getting distracted by trifles, Epictetus says, is the easiest thing in the world. Focus on your main duty. So what is your duty? Be it to yourself, if you have family living with you, be it to your family, the roles you play, they are your duty. And understand all the rest are trifles. It is not that we have so little time, but that we lose so much, Seneca said. Especially in the time, in the Georgian period, in the time of Mrs. Bennet, she had a lot less time. And she chose this character to spend that time on focusing on things outside of her control. And that time is then lost. And when her daughters are all married off, and she says in the beginning, I shall want for nothing, when that happens, then what's she going to do? She's going to look back and say, wow, it worked out one way or another, and that time is gone. And then she's going to create another lot of distractions because she's letting her mind run riot. So again, it's identifying, focusing on what matters, identifying, first of all, using our journals, that challenge, that concern we have, identifying it and then relating it to a fear and understanding, that's just related to one of the 6 fears. This is ridiculous. This is what my brain's doing. It's just trying to scare me. Well, I've already thought that today. Is that the best you've got? You've already said that to me 20 times this morning. Stop it. I've had enough. And keep doing that. Again, it's a daily endeavour. So we're dedicating our attention to tasks and principles that truly matter. And what truly matters is not those trivial things. Changes will occur physically, emotionally. People will come and they will go. We will get older. We will see changes physically in ourselves. But rather than getting sidelined by this, we say to ourselves, I choose to recognize what's happening and I am going to put it in its place rather than let it grow and overtake my well-being. Part of Stoic Philosophy tells us, and as we know, time is finite. It's a precious resource. So if we choose to waste it on this meaningless repetition, being drawn into and making over-significant this repetition, we are squandering our time. And this energy we have for life, if we allow it to be drained by this continual fear, this continual repetition of thought, we are pouring our limited resources, our limited energy and time down the drain. It's our job to take control of our thoughts, our distractions. One way of doing this is to journal, but then throughout the day, allocate time to specific tasks. This is my time to immerse myself in the words of the literary masters, for example. This is my time to be mindful of, for example, I like to cook, to be mindful of what I'm making and immerse myself in that experience to make this the best dish I can make at this time. Very closely associated with mindfulness. We do not want to forget that we have goals we want to serve. We have goals we want to serve. We have plans that we are committed to. And we don't want to get too distracted. We don't want to drain our energy too much so that we can't do that. The idea is that we are not stealing from our own future. We are contributing to it by being mindful of what is happening. We don't want to give away our focus to distraction. We want to remain focused. And that's the message of the day. I hope that made sense. I'm going to go back on my screen now. And let's have a look. Did anyone catch all the fears and add them here? I was driving, couldn't write them down fast enough. I will write them into the chat. Let's just see what Inga said. If I'm honest, internally I feel like Mrs. Bennet a lot, drama and worry. Yes, don't we all? Externally I try to be like the mother from Little Women, calm, inventive. Yes. But that's the battle. None of us are immune, Inga. None of us. And that's the point. So we have to keep fighting the good fight for ourselves. And that's what Stoicism is about. Okay, let's see if I can copy and just add into the fears into the chat. It's just going to save me time. Here we go. So fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of someone's love, old age and death. Let me put that in there. There. Joe says, like the thought of compartmentalising the fear so it exists in a rational space, and that Stoicism is developing resistance and clarity of thought. Yes. Yes, Joe, exactly. It exists in a rational space. It's not that we're saying it doesn't exist. We are not denying the emotion at all. We are acknowledging it, and then we are placing it somewhere we can work with it. Fascinating to tie this to Mrs. Bennet. I feel more sympathetic. Yeah. And this is why I like Pride and Prejudice, because you have a wide range of characters that are fully developed, and they all have their own problems, and none of them are perfect. They are all challenged in some way, and they're all battling it out in their own way. And why Austen is so fantastic is that she identifies each problem and she throws shade on it. She mocks it. She is mocking the human experience. She is laughing at the human plight and the ridiculousness of it all, because it is ridiculous. We are all so consumed with our own concerns. And if we step back, we realise it's all ridiculous. Jo says, do you think Mr. Bennet helped her anxiety or made it worse? Would she have been less anxious with a different husband? I don't think she was set up as somebody who would be any different with anyone else. Now, I do think that Mr. Bennet didn't help, but in another way, I think she was very lucky to have married someone who was able to make light of her failings. Now, as is acknowledged, he fell short a few times and was quoted as saying in the end of the novel, right, I'm going to go completely I'm going to do a complete U-turn now, and Kitty, you are not going to be, have any time out of the house whatsoever. And he went completely the opposite way with her. So he understood that there were some failings, but I do believe that he was non-reactive to Mrs. Bennet, his wife. He worked with what he had, and they had an understanding together that, well, you are going to be over anxious all the time, and I am going to accept that that's just the way you are, and I'm going to openly tell you that I'm going to need to escape from that every now and then. Because it's not really his job to fix his wife, is it? He teases her, he makes light of it, and really, I don't think that's such a bad thing. I think that's a good thing if you can balance each other. It's not a perfect situation in terms of marriage, but then again, marriage is, especially in that time, everlasting, so you have to work with what you have. He's not resentful of his wife, he's not bitter about his wife's behaviour, he accepts it and he makes light of it. And I will see you next time. Bye.